Again, as I mentioned, we'll be recording this session. If you don't mind muting your mics if you're not asking a question. I do monitor the chat. If you have questions as well, I will try to answer those as I see them come in. But today we're going to be covering accounting, pricing, product setup here today. And we'll start off first on the setup side, on the product setup, catalog setup, and then we'll look at how prices and product or invoiceable items are generated to the accession or the client screen as miscellaneous. And then from there, we will look at the actual accounting screen where you can manage those items, generate invoices, statements, payments, adjustments. We'll talk a little bit about receivables on the AR screen and reports. So, and we'll start there today. So let me bring over my screen. All right, for those that may or may not have been on previous sessions, again, WebView is a web-based application. You can just log in with your credentials here. And again, when you come into that view, got your splash screen here with your navigation across the top. When talking about accounting and products, a lot of that's going to be, under navigation in the kind of setup side of things. So again, as if as a being a role-based system, if you don't see some of these setup options here, or you don't see the accounting screen, that's going to be a privilege issue on your account specifically that you'll need to ask an administrator to turn on that screen, make that available for you so that you can navigate there to you. If you are, again, this is, in an accounting area, and that's really where you want to spend your time. You can also update your navigation across the top again to make maybe navigation, product setup, any of those things can be put on your navigation bar up under your username. There's your user profile. Let's first talk about product setup, kind of how you make a billable item first, and then how you associate that to the testable items in the system. So the product setup screen here, across the top, we have several tabs here that are all part of or play into product definition, product setup. I'll kind of start from the right side moving forward. I'm moving to the left. The first thing is we have a concept of price sets. So we were talking about this, I think, previously about when you set up a client, you can give a client a price set. It's like a fee schedule, some people might call it, a list of prices by category. So you can give a client a single price set that is going to be used for when calculating prices or generating prices for you there. The price set has two things. One is there is a multiplier that is applied to it. So if you are, for example, have like an employee and you give them a 20% discount, then you can add a 0.8% multiplier there, and every product for that client will be automatically discounted. The 20% would be multiplied by zero point 0.8 there. And you can do it up or down. So maybe if you have, out of state, I know it's a traditional thing historically is that maybe if it's out of state, you want to mark it up a little bit more, maybe 10%, 20% more. If it's out of state, you can do that as a single multiplier. The other way this comes in is that you can take a price set and also associate it directly to a single product and override that product not by a multiplier, you can just set the price. And so the way the logic is, and I'll just go ahead and bring up an example product so you can kind of see this right now. So let's say, oops, DVD. I'm just going to just use the BVD as our kind of example as we kind of walk through it today. So let's say BVD tests. You've got a product that represents that test that you're going to run, the money you want to collect for it. So when you're defining the product here, this first part up here is your kind of base or default price. And so no matter what price set the client is set at, if it does not specify something different, then it's going to always default back to this. So that's the other thing about the fee schedule is you don't have to define a price for each of the different fee schedules you set up. Like employee, if you want to give an employee a 20% discount, then by giving them the employee type, then when they say do a BVD, it's not going to see any of these what we call alternates here, and it's just going to take this default price and multiply it by zero point 0.8. However, if for some reason, let's say for employees, BBD, I can't discount that much, and I want to come in and say, okay, I'm going to set the price for employees, or not educational, sorry, employee. I want to set that not at, say, a 20% discount. I want to say maybe make it only 550. we'll just take off, we'll say 540, 10% off, right? And for now, we'll come back to the multi-item here in a second. So that way, because now if I'm doing a BVD for an employee, it's going to find that I have a set price for it and use that price, period. Again, the multiplier only kicks in if it's just using the default price and applying the multiplier to it. If you set a price for that particular price set, it uses it, with no additional multiplying in there. So that's how the price sets are used. Again, you can define that. Each client that you set up has that. Now, in the lab setup area, and let me go ahead and have that screen open. We'll bounce back and forth to this a couple times. Under the client setup here, you can set what is the default, what we call in-state price for a client, what price set you want to use. Typically, a lot of people use the word normal client here. Again, the names are all customizable. So if you'd rather call it regular fee schedule or whatever you want to call it, you can. When you say in-state, what it's going to do is compare the address of the client to the address for this state, Georgia, for my example here. If it was Florida or Louisiana, Texas, wherever it is, that would be your default state. If you want to do it out-of-state billing as an automatic feature, you can turn that on. And then what it'll do is if the state of the client is different than the default state, then it'll automatically select the second one down here. If there is no state identified at the bill party person, then it just uses the default. It just assumes that it's an in-state client there. And these are just defaults when you're building the new client. So the new client that comes in, it's going to automatically drop normal client in there or out of state clinic in this case in my demo system here. And this is also where some of the other defaults kick in, as we were mentioning before when talking about clients. This is also where you can turn on by default auto invoicing per a session. That is a client by client decision. So let me jump over to a client, bring that up as well so you kind of see that. We use the same companion animal hospital I was using before. Here is an example. Under the billing tab is where these defaults all show up, right? So it automatically filled in the price set as a normal client when I built companion animal hospital because they are a Georgia hospital. Like I said, it picked up that they were from Georgia, dropped that in there automatically for me. This is that auto invoicing a session. Again, that's a per client decision, but you can have a system default so as you build new clients, it automatically has that checked on for you there in the system. So going back to here to price sets, that's how the price set is. The main purpose and use of the price set is allowing you to create what's considered normal, and then from there you can have other ones that you want to have. And you can, as you can tell here in this test system I'm in, you can have as many as you want. It's unlimited in how many price sets you want to set up. Use it for different reasons in the system, however you find that necessary. Now, on pricing, specifically around price sets and stuff, is at the client level. You have the price set here, normal client. So that way, if I was doing a BVD for companion animal hospital here, it's just going to pick up the normal client pricing, which was default, then the $60. However, you can also come in here and do a single product override as well. So let's say for some reason, you make a little agreement with Companion Animal Hospital and you want to say, because they're going to say send you a bunch of BVDs or whatever reason you come up with, you can say, well, I'm going to give it to you for $50. I'm going to discount it down even more. Maybe there's, again, no volume discounting. We'll talk about in a second. But you can actually say for this single product for this client, if I see BVD, it's going to use the $50 there, regardless of what the price set says, regardless of what the default price is. It's going to give it to this client for 50 bucks. Every other product that's not listed here would just be the normal calculation. It would go to the price set, look at the price set for the product. If it doesn't find a price set override, then you'll use the default price. So it's all kind of an override system. We have a default for the product. We have a price set, calculation, either using a set price or a calculated price, and or just a single client per product setting you can do there, allowing us to do all the different kind of deals and agreements that we make throughout the system with different researchers or producers or things like that in the system. So that's how the price set is kind of factors in. Also, when setting up products. You can put them in buckets, product categories. This is solely for your own internal bucketing of items. It's a completely free form text, is as an abbreviation or a code, a name, and then at the product level, you can set the category for that item. So again, going back to our BBD here, it's just something that you can set here, use it for reporting purposes, using it for querying ability. If you want to make it use that as a section indicator, you can do that as well. So you can use the category however you want to use it in your lab. Again, just to help categorize tests or billing codes that may be put on a client's invoice. And then obviously just some descriptions there as well. So going back to the setup, here side. So that's product category. There's also product line, which is a very similar concept. So when you're setting up a product, there is a product line and sequence number, we call it. The line, again, is just a grouper, just grouping products by different areas if you want to. I have multiple labs in this database, and so we set it up so each lab has its own kind of line number. And this is what would be the equivalent of like a product code, right? So if you want to build a product code, 9.10 is, BVD or whatever. And actually, in this case, it's 9.5035 would be the product code that you would see like on the bills or in reports. So we concatenate these two items, that line number and sequence number together to make up a product code. But the product line itself, again, is just another grouper that you can use to kind of categorize or group products together. Again, if you want to do it however best fits your lab, again, for reporting purposes or just querying in the system. So those two things both are just there for your own kind of organizational structure. WebView does support taxes. So if you do need to turn on taxes in the system for either things you may be selling, like products you're selling, or if you do have to add, say, a VAT tax or something to your services, you can do that. The way we've designed it is that you set up first the category of items because in some of the states, taxes can get very complicated that you actually categorize the types of products. Is it a consumable like a food item? Is it a testing service? Is it actually a pharmacy item? Anyways, they can get complicated, but you set up the product category, the taxable categories first, and then under the tax setup itself, you can define as many different types of taxes. Maybe you have a state level tax. Some places might have a county level. So we might have like Athens, Clarke County, for example, um, may have its own extra add-on. And so what they may do is they may say, okay, for all products, they're going to tack on another percent to everything that you sell as a product. That's a very common thing I've seen in a lot of places is you may have like state level taxes, county level taxes in the system. What VetV will do is depending on your the product category, tax category here, it will apply all of the taxes that are required. So if this product category products in this example is on a particular item you're selling, then it would actually collect 1% and keep that categorized so you can run a report and say, okay, we owe Athens Clarke County this 1%, and then we owe the state this, say, 7% for products, but maybe 2% for services. Athens Clarke County doesn't collect, doesn't have tax on services. You can mix and match that, but you set up the category of taxes, and then at each category you set what is the actual active tax rate. You'll notice there is a start and end. So if you get notice that your taxes are going to change next year, you can come in here and stage those up for the next, calendar year, fiscal year, wherever that rolls in your state. At the product level itself, you just define what tax category this product belongs to. If you leave it blank, then it's non-taxable. It's just not going to add any tax to it. But if you say it's a product type item, then it's going to then, as it's put on an invoice or it's calculated in the system, it'll automatically add those taxes in for you and then keep track of that in the system. All right. And then we'll talk about product cap is the last thing here as far as setup before we get into the product itself. We also offer a product cap, it's called. It's where the most common example we have of this or I've seen is with like a necropsy. So you may want to set the necropsy at some dollar amount, But yet, if you run a culture inside the lab based on that necropsy, then it would be considered included in the price of the necropsy. So you can create this cap. Again, the idea is that if product A has been billed on the session, and product A has this cap associated to it, then product B, if it's in the list, would be non-billed. We add the product onto the accession, but we adjust it down to zero for you. So we still include it on the invoice. It's still included in the system with an automatic adjustment, basically showing that it was capped down to zero. So you can see that, run reports on it. Client can also see the fact that it was included as part of their necropsy or whatever it is you're setting up. It could be, and again, this is freeform in the sense that you can create as many different caps as you want, and you can associate different products to each of the caps in the system for whatever the use might be. You will see these little squiggly symbols here. We had a person that was playing in our test system that liked to use those as a way to find their things items. So don't think that's anything special in VetView. It's just someone typed that in because they like the squigglies. Um, so now on the product itself, when going back to our setup here, the way the cap is included again is if I were to go, let me find my let me go back here. Let's go look at the necropsy. So we saw that the necropsy cap was defined to have those products capped off. If I were to go to look at the necropsy, bovine necropsy itself, this is where you say which cap are you using. So again, you have to have a parent, which is the necropsy, and then all of the child items that's in the cap list that's going to be zeroed out. Those are the ones that were listed on the setup side. So you set this one as the one that is the parent, you might say, or the triggering test or product, I should say. And then the cap is all the things that will get zeroed out. It has to be on the same accession. It does not cross accessions in the system. So if I do a necropsy on one accession, culture on another, it's not gonna zero anything out. It has to be on the same accession. Now, so let's jump into the product itself and talk through it. The first thing I had on my list I want to talk about is the multi-item discount. So obviously there is a base price here, a unit price in the system, but VetView offers just a simple step down for multi. This is where the step down happens. Um, Yes, there is reports you can run. I don't have an example of that, but you can pull that out of the database as a report in the system. You can pull out the totals for caps as well. But yeah, yes, you can find that information. We'll talk about reports in a minute. And that's one reason why we wanted to go ahead and leave the product on the accession, but then zero it out. We want to record that we did actually discount it. It doesn't look like it got missed in that sense. Um, so back to the multi-item here. So the multi-item, like I said, is a single, simple step down. It's not tiered in the sense that there's more than one. It's just one tier or one step down based on this. The idea behind this is it's a setup fee. So let's say I'm doing BVDs or necropsies or whatever. I guess BVD would be a better example here. Let's say I'm doing my BVD, and with BVDs, there's a setup cost. If I did one BVD for a client, I have to do the setup, I have to run the test. But maybe after the first one, running a second or third one isn't as expensive, right? You want to give them a step down pricing there after the first one. Now you can make this threshold wherever you want to. And you can go up or down. So you could say maybe this was not a BVD, maybe this was a sensitivity, and you're doing an isolate and a sensitivity. You could say, well, after the third one, we're going to jump this up to $15. We're going to up price it after the third one. So you can step it up or down. And then this is the threshold for it. This is where that step up, step down happens. So after the third one, or excuse me, at the third one, we're going to bump it to this new price. Or in the common one, like the setup fee there, you can see after the first one, it's now going to bump down to say $5 after. So this is um, the cutoff point to when it starts kicking in. So one would be one at that price, two and up would be the second price in this example here. And so that's the one single step down we have that happens again, even when you're setting the price sets, you see there as I was putting it in there, the price set would then have its own calculation. So as an employee, maybe again, I can turn that off. So maybe normal clients get this step down concept, but then employees, they don't get it. And I like to just use zero, put the same price in here so it's very clear. Basically, by putting zero in here, it disables it. We're never going to look at this price. But by just putting zero in there, I don't like to just, again, duplicate the price down so it's very clear. It doesn't change at all. So that would be disabling the multi-step discount there for employees. So for employees, it's always 540, no matter if it's 1 or 20. Now that also has to be on the same session. It's not an invoicing period. It's not a, per month, per year. It's this invoice. If you send me one BVD, it's 650. If you send two BVDs together, I give you the discount. Again, so it's on the same session as where this discount kicks in. If you have multiple sessions, it's not going to factor in at all. All right, so kind of working down here, so we've got the price. Now, the unit cost is just an internal number to help you if you want to do cost analysis and say, well, to run a BVD actually cost me, let's say more realistic, say that cost me $3 in materials. Maybe that's an average, some way you figured that out. You could do that. It will capture that in the background, and you can then run reports if you want to figure out how much unit cost you had versus how much you actually collected there as well. So you can put in a unit cost. The unit price is what's used to figure out for invoicing purposes to the client. You can write notes on products if you just want to write a note about it, whatever, again, whatever you want to do. But you can also flag things with alerts if you want to. This is used more for inventory. That's another thing that BetView does support is an inventory module. So each product you need to flag it up here as being an inventory item. If you flag it as an inventory item, then it will, when you hit save here, it'll open up a whole nother tab where you can then define where you get it from, how many do you have on hand, history on purchases, history on transfers, counts, logs, and so on and so on, and what vendors do you order it from in the system. So that is a per product item as well, because obviously if you don't want to put that on if you're doing, say, just a normal BV test that represents the test itself, that's not inventory. Inventory would be more like your formalin cups or your testing kits or your bleaches or whatever else you used. Currently, in this version, you cannot associate inventory to a test yet. That is on our roadmap. But for right now, inventory is just buying consumables and then using it to transfer it down to sections. Inventory is managed at the section level. So going back to the setup screen here, when you define your sections, we talked about that previously about, molecular versus bacteriology versus serology. Each of the sections, you can turn them on as inventory areas as well. When you turn on an inventory area at a section level, you then see these other tabs will show up where you can see defaults for purchasing if they're purchasing items. There are locations where they store stuff. So the inventory locations, different than specimen locations, they could be the same names, but they're managed separately in the system. Inventory locations where you keep your inventory, but you can also associate users or roles of people to a section to say who can manage that inventory. So if you want to set it up as you have a, say, a procurement person who is going to do all the purchasing for the lab, they have a general storeroom, and then they can transfer stuff to each section based on a request. There's a whole module for ordering items, transferring them between sections. You could do inventory counts in the system. That's right now, that's the mechanism we have for managing your items. When you do a transfer request, you can update your counts. You can just do an audit monthly, weekly, annually, however you want to do that to also update your counts in the system. But there's a transfer request, there's a purchase order module. We do talk to two different EPO systems right now, PeopleSoft and Jagger, or SciQuest, I think is another name they use sometimes. So if you do have an EPO system, we can actually push orders into the EPO system and then also push receipts when you get receive the orders as well. So we can talk to EPO systems as well. Just those two right now. If you have another one, we can talk about interfacing to those in a different meeting. So there's a whole inventory module there. I'm not going to go into all the details around transferring and purchasing. That would be a whole nother meeting on its own. But just know I want to show the basics of it. which is that you turn on at the section level the inventory areas that you will be storing stuff or receiving things into. And then at the product level, you can define items as an inventory item or not. And then defining the details around it. What is a sales unit, stock units versus ordering units? What's the conversion ratios, prices, things like that. If you are using the purchasing model, you can also have it automatically update your price on the price that you charge to a client potentially, or your cost of things automatically based on your purchases. So as you order and receive things, you can have it auto update your internal cost figures and or even what you would sell it to a client at. So let's, for instance, maybe you're purchasing formalin cups pre-made, and then you offer to sell them to clinics or referring veterinarians who want to buy it through you because they need one or twosies, where you maybe offer that at a discount or maybe not. Maybe you sell it for convenience. Either way, you can sell those directly to a client, and it would potentially be able to auto or dynamically update those prices by turning on some of these auto updates for you in the system. So again, we have the inventory module that goes along with it, but you do have to turn that on if you want that per product in the system. All right. And at the bottom down here, a couple things that we want to just show you as reference. You do have a way to have alternate identifiers here. Now, an alternate identifier could be like a synonym, but it also can be barcodes. If you do get into inventory management and you want to start using the barcode on the packaging, your UPS barcodes or UPC, I should say, barcodes or some other manufacturer barcode, you can associate those to the product. And then on the inventory screens and places, when you scan the barcode, it would automatically choose that product for you and put it on your transfers. You can even use it for billing if you wanted to. Or maybe when you scan the formalin cup, it would automatically select the right product so that you could charge the client. So you can associate the barcodes that are coming from the manufacturers or on your packaging and associate there. Like a synonym, you can put them in there and then have them come up. Don't worry about the CDM and the lab product. Those are used in the mapping between the hospital, if you were using the VetView hospital system in there. So that's what the alternate identifiers. Think of them like synonyms or associated barcodes. And then also, we just show you a quick link off to the items that are using this product. So catalog items, things like that. Let me just double check here, make sure I covered everything. All right. Yeah, so we talked about those items. Now let's jump into how do you associate this product to a test, to something that's going to be put on a session, and also then how do you manually maybe charge a client for something like we're talking about, like the formalin cups, things like that. So jumping back over here. So I want to talk about that first, and then we'll jump into the accounting screen, and then how do you manage all this information. But we mentioned it before, but I'll kind of go back into it. So when I'm doing in a session, it's all automatic. So as soon as let me go ahead and put a bill party on here so the charges will calculate. Um, so I've got my companion animal hospital here. As I put in any kind of catalog item, and so this is where I mentioned it last time when we were talking about test setup and catalogs. The catalog is the orderable item. It's the thing that the client is requesting you to do. I want you to do a necropsy, a BVD. That may be a single test. It may be a package deal. It may be all kinds of different things, but it's what makes it orderable in the system, and the product is associated to that. So if I'm doing that BVD, BVD1 here, and I say I've got one of those, or if I'm duplicating it and I'm doing 10 of these, 10 BVDs on different patients. So let me kind of finish this here. Cow, bovine, and serum. Just that. So if I'm doing 10 of those and I'm putting 10 catalog items on the bill, I wouldn't want to change this bill quantity. That's the price, that's the number of products you want to bill for this one catalog item. So by default, if they just kind of leave that alone, most people are not touching this unless you have some special scenario. I've seen that used. I saw one lab use it as a way to do like biopsy sites. Like if I got a biopsy in that had three different tumors included in the one jar, they would do say like a biopsy multi-site or whatever, and then bill for three sites because they're going to be doing three microscopics, kind of concept. And so they wanted to use the billing quantity as a way to say, I want to upcharge the one biopsy test I'm doing because they only wanted one report. It was one bottle of fixed tissue, something like that. If you're just doing 10 BVDs on 10 different cows, you would leave that at one. Let's say 10, duplicate this 10 times. And then if you look at the charges tab, you'll see it's automatically putting that in there for you. It's showing you the one quantity, $50 there for those in the system and giving you the invoice amount. You notice the invoice amount is higher than the actual subtotal here, and that's because taxes. I've turned on taxes that we were playing with earlier. You can see it's calculating those out and adding those in as well to the system. So it also shows that there was price set markup added as well to this client. So all those things get noted in the automatically in the info dot there for you. So you can see that in the system and give you a grand total for this at the bottom down here. Um, Now this also has other things like a session priority fees and stuff like that. As I said, mentioned before, VetView supports priority-based fees. And so let's go back up to the lab setup and talk about that for a second before we jump into the catalog item itself. So priority accession fees here. So on this tab of the lab setup, you can set up the different priorities here, and there's also a session fees tab. So there's two different concepts here. Priority-based charging is that based on what the user selects on the session screen, it says, okay, this is a stat case. I'm going to charge the stat fee. Or no, it's a routine case. I'm just going to charge the normal session fee. You can do that this way. The other way you can do it, instead of tying the product to the priority, you can just do an accession fee, which means that, I could put the accession fee here and that means that every product that comes in, from every session that's created, I should say, in the system will get this fee associated to it, no matter the priority. So this is kind of like a flat fee concept, and you can do it as a percentage of the total, a flat fee, and or a product there. And you can also, there was a exception added that if it's coming through the interface, maybe you want to give them a break and say exclude it if it was submitted electronically. That way, again, we can start penalizing people who are still submitting on paper versus giving a benefit to those who are maybe submitting on the portal or through one of the interface mechanisms there. You can enable that or not. But again, you can use this kind of work either or. I'd say either or. There are additional things. So if you have a priority fee and you have a flat fee, it's going to put both on the case. So make sure that make sure you compensate there. Either don't add the accession fee here and then make the stat fee be an additional fee that you want to do for stats. You can do that by using the combination of the two tabs there. But going back to our session, that's where you see this. That's how this gets calculated down here at the bottom. That is the accession or priority fee here. And that should auto calculate. So if I were to come up here and change the priority to say stat, save this, it'll automatically, when it come back in the charges, now it has subbed out and now it has the stat fee there instead of the accession fee, the standard accession fee. Again, all this can be disabled if you don't have those or don't support that billing mechanism. You can turn that off as well. Um, yeah, so you can at the client level. You can also exempt them from the accession fees at the client level. So you can, at the client level, you can exempt all these things. You can exempt taxes, you can exempt the fees, you can exempt them from finance charges, which we'll talk about in a minute, late fees or finance charges. So those are other billing options as well in the system. Another way you could do it is based on the price set. You could also zero it out and just say that product is zero for this one client. There's several ways that you could potentially do that, but specifically the session fees can be exempted this way. Um, all right. Now, so that's there's kind of so far we talked about two basic mechanisms to get billing onto an accession, either based on the catalog item that's chosen and have the normal, what am I testing, what am I doing? We also have the accession fees that are calculated automatically put on here, but you can also add just additional charges yourself here, again by just typing in whatever it is, formalin or any other test. It can be whatever it is. It's a product. You're just picking products and setting what it is that you're selling them and then adding that in. And VetView will keep those, kind of subdivided for you so you can clearly see what was just manually added versus what was being test calculated. And then also there's the session fees there as well. So there's kind of three sources of charges that can be tied to an accession there for you. We did also add recently ability to print this as an estimate. So if you have someone who wants to know, they want more of a formal estimate of how much is it going to cost to run some test, you can come in and build in a session as the mock estimate, print that out and then send that to them, or print or send that to them. It will get captured in the log of what you sent them as well. Again, everything that leaves VetView is logged, so you know what you sent them as your estimate for that. And you just do that by modeling out what it is. And you can leave that in the new status. You don't actually have to accept it. You can leave it there in the new status, waiting for them to either say, yes, let's do it, and then you just keep working on this case, or you can, delete it out if they never do it. You can also change the session number if you wanted to, if you kind of don't expect to do that very often. You can either build a lab site specifically to kind of put the numbers in automatically and then transfer it in once it receives. There's several different ways if you want to kind of segregate that out temporarily from your everyday. If you don't want to lock that a session number, you can do that. Several different ways there in the system. Um, You can. So you can also, if they want to, I don't recommend it, but I try to, it's a good segue here. Yes, you can put zero in here to zero out something. There is a difference between that and actually doing an adjustment. So if I put zero in here and save it, then if I go back to charges, you'll notice it did decrement. That item basically will not actually show up anywhere on the bill. So you'll notice it, if we were to count these, there's only 9 of them now because we zeroed out one. So we don't show the zero quantity here versus, let's say for some reason on this particular test, we're going to zero it out or discount it because of whatever reason. That's where the pencil icon comes in here. So I can come in here at any point, this is still a new session, hasn't been even started working yet. I can go ahead and stage up changes. So for some reason, this test, because of whatever reason, research, teaching, whatever you want to call it, you could come in here and just zero this out and just say zero here, write a reason. This is, maybe it's a teaching case, research, whatever you want to call it. Hit save. Now what it does is it shows that it was originally $1, but now I did an adjustment on it and it gets recorded. I did an adjustment, subtotal 04 comment teaching, so it's all logged in the system versus just changing the bill quantity to zero and having no information about why potentially. So that's another option there. You can do it either way. Now, one caveat to that is since I adjusted this item, now that test code, if I go in there and change the test code, it's not going to change this item because the adjustment takes precedence. Because I've touched it and done an adjustment to it, it will stay that way. It will not, if I were to go back to this test and actually change it to 2 bill quantities, it's not going to auto calculate this up to say $100 because it sees the adjustment linked to that item in the system. So really the adjustment should be done, I feel like more at the end or when it's kind of that is a done deal. If not, you'll have to come in here and just adjust it again. And you have to come in here and change it to back to what it was or um, uh, change it to whatever it needs to be. Now, if you change the bill quantity here, it will recalculate as well. Yeah, so it'll show you that it recalculated up, things like that. And it does log each of the changes in here so that you know the different notes and things that people put on them as they adjust it. But you can stage those up at any point in the case. When it finalizes, then it will get invoiced out to the client. All right. Now, in addition to the session-based charges, you can also do non-session-based charges or client miscellaneous charges, is what we call it. So if I go over to the companion animal hospital or the client itself, on the accounting tab here, there's a couple things you can see here from this screen. First of all, you have the first tab is the history. This is talking about invoices, statements, and payments adjustments, those kind of things. Their AR balance here, the running balance. And again, remember in VetView, revenue is only recognized once it's been invoiced. And so it will not show up in here until you have invoiced that client for that work that you're doing. Until an item is invoiced, you can modify that item. You can edit it, you can, delete it, change the quantities on it, all those things, and it will just update that item and you'll kind of move forward. Once it's been invoiced though, that item is locked and now any adjustments you make or other changes you make will be additional adjustment records to that original one It does not change the original item once you invoice it. So that is one of the locking things in the system. The second tab over is the current charges. So current charges is showing you a preview of everything the client has in a non-invoiced status. It's either a working case or a finalized case. Finalized is what we use as the kind of ready for invoicing, you might say. But it hasn't been invoiced yet. So this is all the stuff that is waiting to be invoiced for this client. You've got the working cases finalized, and then there's also a category for miscellaneous charges. So if I wanted to sell a client, say those formalin cups again, they just walk in the front door, they want 10 cups. I could come under their client record here, go to the current charges or miscellaneous charges, just another way to view those charges, either one, and click on the add miscellaneous charges button. I can put in formalin cups here and say, okay, they're buying 10 of those. It'll show them a price. I can put a comment on there if I want to, print it, even print it on the invoice or not. Um, and then save those. And again, they will go into the miscellaneous charge section, waiting for the next invoicing cycle to happen. Uh, so an invoicing cycle is, again, if you're doing monthly invoices, this would automatically get picked up for this client and the monthly cycle. Or if you're doing per session invoicing, you would need to manually come in here and say, I want to create an invoice, and then go ahead and create that invoice right here from this screen. So you can create an invoice manually, again, or if you're doing your monthly invoicing cycle, it'll automatically get picked up in that next cycle in the system. So talking about invoicing those charges now. So invoicing at the session level, invoicing at the client level. At going back to the client's billing information here, that's another option that you can turn on. We mentioned that in the lab setup screen. It's also here. What that does, if you have auto invoicing at the session level, then as soon as the session finalizes, it will take any charges that have not, any tests or charges that have not been invoiced yet and invoice them. If you reopen the case, add another test, and then finalize it, then it will create another invoice just for the one new test you added. So it keeps track of what's been invoiced, what hasn't been invoiced, and that way it knows what the differences are in those different things. One thing back on the session real quick. Let's go back to the session. Talking about bill party, I forgot to mention that as I was there earlier. I think I talked about it when we were talking about session management, but I also want to bring up here. You'll notice here it has a bill party column here. At any point, you can change the bill party even after it's been finalized in invoices. If it's been invoiced, it'll actually automatically create adjustments back to the original bill party and then charge the new bill party for you. But to change the bill party is just as easy as, again, clicking the edit button here, switching that bill party to either somebody else on the case, or you can even add somebody else. Let's say I'm charging the USDA again as like a research case. I can just do that. And it'll automatically change. And you'll notice it will also change the prices automatically based on what that client's price set is. So it'll dynamically update pricing for whatever the different bill party is. Again, that's what it's based on, not on the session itself. So I can save that, and that can be a one-off thing. If you're wanting to change the entire sessions bill party, the easiest way to do that is you can go to the contacts here, and I can add. Say the USDA in here as well. I can actually just right click on it and say set them as bill party, and it would switch the entire session to that bill party in one change versus going in one by one and doing it there. I think I just have to refresh here. Um, should have changed it. No, I'm looking at that. I don't know why I didn't switch them. But you can do that as well. You can also, from the administrator, even if it's been finalized, there is a transfer a session option here where you can change a person and or change a bill party midstream, and update that again, and it will automatically make adjustments as needed, or just switch it if it's not been billed yet. So you can switch the bill party for the entire session, or you can go line by line, updating those in the system there as well. So bill party items can be adjusted on the fly or staged up. This is a newest session, so it hasn't even been started yet. You can go ahead and stage all these changes up in there as well. All right, so again, as going back to the client, that you have the auto invoicing option. If you're not doing auto invoicing, or you're doing a mixture, so you again, it's per client, so you can do a mixture. You can have some clients auto invoicing out, or you can have it, some clients that just when you run your monthly invoicing cycle, it picks up anything pending and generates the invoice for them at that point. And so that's a good segue now over to the accounting screen itself. I believe we've covered everything on that initial kind of setup side. Yep. So we've talked about kind of setting up products, how you can categorize them, taxes if you want to, associating them to a catalog. Now, real quick, let me jump back to the catalog setup real quick, to make sure I highlight that again. So in the catalog setup here, so BVD example here. Um, Here it is. So this is the screen where you are making, like, as I keep using the word, orderable. So here the idea is that the catalog is what your client is asking for. You give it a name, you associate the test, plural, potentially here, and then the charges, potentially plural. Now, they are not, there's no relationship between this test and this charge, because we want to give you the ability to do true panels or profiles, you might say. So another example might be, a classic one here is the like pre and post bile acid, right? So pre and post bile acid, it's actually the same test, but you're doing two of them together. And so it's one product that's going to be billed to the client, but I'm actually got two test codes that I'm ordering because I need that for when running it on the instruments. I need to run it, I want to interface it to say the Emulite, and the Emulite needs it as two separate specimens, two separate test codes, for the interface. So we can do it here as a way to create a crew package or a profile where I've got two tests, one item's on the bill. The way this works is if I cancel one of the two tests, it's still going to bill for the whole package. If I cancel the entire thing, which that's an option, you'll see if when you go to cancel it, it'll ask you, do you want to cancel all of it or just one of them? If you cancel, both or the whole thing, then that's when it takes the product off the invoice, off the session. But if you just cancel one of the items out of the package, if it, potentially more than two here, it could be 10 items here. Again, it's still going to bill this item against that session. If you put multiple items here, all those multiple items will again be posted all together on the invoice. Again, you could put multiples here, but just know until the catalog is canceled, all of those items are going to be applied. Again, there's no relationship between the test and the individual charge here. Again, if you wanted that, then you could create them as, there's another mechanism for that. If you wanted to do more of a auto add concept, and again, the example here would be more like, we talked about previously, like in the biopsy example. So in the biopsy example that we talked about previously, um, mm, where's the normal biopsy? Sorry, it's called P biopsy. P biopsy. Here it is. Um, So this is an example where I have the biopsy. It has a price for the biopsy, and then you can say I want other related catalog items, and you can even have those auto add. So if you want to do it where one item triggers another item, but it's a completely different billable, it's a completely different thing, you can do that. It's just set up slightly different. You set it up as a related item, you select, these are catalog items you're selecting, and you can say auto add, or if you say no, what that does, it just puts it in a quick short list so you can add it quickly, but it doesn't auto add it for you. Auto adding would actually truly, as soon as you add the biopsy, that grossing slide pops up on there. If I cancel the histo gross, the charge associated with it, because if I open it up, it can have its own charge. Now, in this example, histology doesn't bill clients directly, so there is no charge here. But it could. You could have the histology charge here for that, and it would have an independent billing process with that. So related is different than, say, truly doing a package or a panel of tests with one billable code there to go with it. So we try to make it where you can mix and match a lot of different things between the catalog, the related items or related catalogs, kind of a linking between them, but yet they're independent versus having them different tests. The versus a subtest. So if I were to look at the example we talked about there was the isolate. So like an aerobic culture that has a isolation for sensitivity, that had a concept of Sorry, it's the culture. I should pull up the culture here. So if I do an aerobic culture, so the aerobic culture has a price, here for the aerobic culture. Inside the aerobic culture, I have the ability to do what we call subtests. But that's a small dynamic thing. It's a subtest. It's not a new catalog item. And so it doesn't incur any additional billing. And that's also why we add maximums here. So the idea behind this, the example would be is, okay, I have an aerobic culture. We include three isolation and sensitivities as part of the original culture. But if you want, you can't do more than three. After three, they would have to order an additional isolation and sensitivity occurring billing. So that's why in the subtest, we allow you to lock a max there in case you do want to limit how many are considered included as part of the culture itself, which is the primary test that was ordered and had the catalog item that they ordered it from. So, and it can be a little confusing, but we try to give you layers there so that you can kind of model the different scenarios you have between just related items like the biopsy and a histo charge, like immunohistochemistry, or if it's truly a package like a pre and post bile acid where you want one price, two tests, you can do that. Or something like the culture where it is a subcomponent of the test that you need to add dynamically, but that doesn't incur any billing. It's just part of the mechanism of doing that test itself. So we've got the different layers there: catalog, test, subtest that you can kind of mix and match there. Just remember though, the keyword I like to use is catalog is the orderable item. It's what the client sees on the portal. It's what the people in the session receiving are selecting based on what the client's asking for. The tests are what are actually being performed and where the results go. All right. So all that put together, we now get billable items that are generated on the session or manually on the client. And so now we're going to jump into how do you kind of manage this more from a kind of a global sense or from the lab level versus individually looking at the session or client. So we're going to go in the accounting screen next and kind of work. This is the primary screen that your accounting people will kind of live in when it comes to managing that. So let's jump over there. So the accounting screen, here we'll jump into it. So again, it's a big screen, lots of tabs. If you are running multiple labs, you can switch between it because remember the main difference between a lab and a site, we talked about that in one of our first classes. The lab has different client bases, has different accounting. Sites are one client base, one accounting. So what you're selecting here is the lab at the top level. So if I had a south side or a secondary site, you would not find their name in here because it's again one client base, one accounting system. So the first tab is just kind of a reference tab. It shows you any clients on hold. So again, if you want to manage them, find them, you can also have all of the alerts. If you have certain alerts here, you can find those. Just a kind of way to see those, maybe click on them, just a quick list. It's just a reference page. But the next tab over is what we call current charges. So just like on the client where we had current charges tab that showed all of the pending things waiting to be invoiced, that's the equivalent of that. However, now I'm looking at it for the lab. So these are all of the different clients that have different things that are in process, either finalized or miscellaneous charges. Now, we've broken up current charges here by finalized, working, and pending. Finalized tab is going to be everything that is ready for an invoice. The session's finalized or it's a miscellaneous charge. If I hit the invoice button right now, everything in here is what's going to be put on an invoice on that client. The working tab is everything it's still in a working state. It's not ready to be invoiced yet. We don't for VetView, the finalization is what makes it qualified for invoicing. If it is still a working case, we don't invoice it. It stays there in the system. Um, and then pending. So one of the options we also built in the VetView is a concept of a pending flag. So you may have saw it when I was clicking through earlier, but there is a flag here called pending review. And that can be set at any point. You can do it on a session screen, you can do it on the client screen when adding miscellaneous charges. even at the product setup level, you can turn that on by default. You can, if you say pending review and turn this on, then it will automatically check that product as pending review every time it's used in the system. The reason for the value is that one of the main workflows here was for shipping charges. A lot of times we knew there were shipping charges, but we're waiting on the bill from FedEx or someone to go look up the bill or do different things because we're getting prices later. Or you can use in the sense if there's questions. Like I think there's a question about this. Do we discount it? Should we not discount it? Things like that. For you can use it for either purpose. But the idea being is that those show up on your accounting screen here as a place to see those and you can manage them. If you're waiting on a shipping amount or other question, you can see those in one place. You can click on them, decide, yeah, everything's good, or maybe I need to update this because there's some additional, we got the bill from FedEx, whatever it is. And then once you release it, it will disappear off the list and now jump back into the finalized queue or potentially in the working queue, depending on if it's on a session or if it's directly on a client there. So the pending is any product that's been flagged as pending in the system. It will not be invoiced until you clear the pending flag. So that's one way of having something on in a session that is finalized. Everything else will go, but that pending item will stay waiting for you to clear it. Once it's been cleared, it'll be picked up in the next invoicing cycle, whatever that is. All right. So now actually creating invoices, there are two ways that you can, well, we've talked about the manual way and the automatic way. So there's those two ways. There's the automatic accession finalization invoicing. There's the I press the button manually invoicing that you can do on the client screen or on a given invoice or a session. This is the create all invoices. If you're doing a monthly invoicing cycle, this would be one of the ways you do that. You would come in here. You can filter by finalized dates. And the value of that is you can say, okay, I want to do everything up to the last day of the month. So I could be doing invoices on the 3rd of May and say I want to do it as of the end of April, right? So you don't have to be there on day, May 1st at 6 a.m. in the morning to beat everybody to the system so you can press the invoice button. You can just say, give me everything as of April 30th. And it'll queue up everything. Anything that was finalized, say today, would be waiting for the next invoicing cycle. So your cycles, you don't have to race to get there to press the button, or anything like that. And so then you can just say, I want to create invoices. It gives you the same, it moves that over, but it also gives you the same prompt, like a confirmation. Yes, you want to do it, generate it, and it'll actually then make those invoices. And what it's going to do there is it's just going to lock all those items that we have there. It's going to create an invoice, give an invoice number, and associate those together. And at that point is when we recognize it as revenue and we lock it in the accounting data system there. You can do that. I'm just going to do one client instead of doing the whole batch. Just add that. So do a single client there. Um, and from there, now the other way, so kind of a fourth way, if you were keeping count, is that there's also a job that you can turn on in the interface and job section, actually under the lab settings here. Um, uh, there is an invoice and statement setup section under accounting, but here you can turn on auto invoices monthly and also statements. You can make it do it that way again if you want it to automate it, have it happen every first day of the month, 15th of the month, whenever your day is that you want it to run. You can set that day, negative being the last day of the month, -1. So that way, if it's 31st day or the 30th of the month, it'll pick up whatever the last day is. Or if you want it to be run on the first day of each month, you can do that. So you can set that up as well here. And you can even have it automatically send the invoices and statements as well as also generating the invoices. So you can generate the invoices. You can also, again, have all that automated. Or if you want to do it manually, that's fine as well because it does give you a way if you have a process where you need to review things, change things, you can do those and then come in here and say create my invoices more on a manual cycle. Either way, whatever way works best for your accounting department. But once you generate invoices, so an invoice is different than a statement. And so the invoice is just the work, right? So it's again affects revenue, it locks it in, but it's not, we don't send invoices to the client per se. We send statements to the client, and we may include the invoices that are part of that statement if you want to. The invoice itself is just talking about the new work that you have done in whatever period that is for the session, for the month, or if you're building it manually. Before jumping into statements, let's talk about the other items here. This next tab over is a search screen that lets you just search for invoices. So you can see the one I just built. It's a way to also search for payments. It's a general search screen that you can look up by payment information, by client. But it's also where you can do adjustments. So if you have an adjustment you need to make, you can come in here, click on the adjustment button, look up your client. So I'm going to pick up my client here. We have different types of adjustments that you may be making. You making an adjustment to an accession. If you do that, it'll ask you which accession or did you make an adjustment on. You can actually find the items and itemize what you did the adjustment on. If you just want to give them a credit for whatever reason, finance charge adjustment, manual payments, so on and so on. There's a lot of different ways to classify the adjustments so that what, again, at the end of the month, end of the year, when you're trying to review this information, you know what kind of adjustments you were making and see that and how it adjusted your revenue in the system. So this is where you can do searches. You can also apply adjustments here. Finance charges are your late fees. You can turn that on as well and automate that. So so when you set this up, there is a late fee section. Let me see where that is. Thank you. Be on the first tab. I always forget where this is put at. I'll find it here in a second. Here it is. Like it's under client. I'm sorry, it took me a second to remember. Under the client setup, down here towards the bottom here, you can do, there's a aging also in VetView. So as invoices age, you can decide, are you aging it by month or day? And the idea there is that some people think about aging like, oh, you're 45 days behind. Or some people think more of like months. You haven't paid last month, you're 2 months behind, you're 3 months behind. So when you're looking at the client screen, let's go back to that real quick. Up here at the top, we show you aging here. So we show you 0 to 30, 30 to 60. So the question is when does an invoice go from, say, it was 90 to 120 days late to when does it jump down to 120, 150? Is it truly at day 121, but it stays there until you reach it? Or is it more by day? Are you looking at 45 days, 50 days? When does it move between groups here? And that's all it is. It's just a grouping mechanism. Some labs wanted it to be by, always following, it's June's bill, it's April's bill, it's May's bill, versus it being 45 days, 55 days, 70 days. Anyways, so that's just a setting there. But that does affect when you start looking at late fees because you can say, okay, I want the job to run at the first day of the month, just the same way as like statements and invoices do. It's going to be percentage based, or it's going to be a flat fee, or maybe it's a combination of flat fee and percentage. And then also, at what point does it start kicking in? If you're net 30, you may not want the late fees to kick in until they are 60 days late, or maybe you're net 90 or something, and you want to kick it in at a different, give them a couple months grace, and then start charging late fees on top of it as well. And so that's an option there. Again, if you don't want it, you can just turn this off, and it will just not do anything, and skip that altogether. So you can decide if you want to apply late fees or not. And the system, I think there's no late fees here. Actually, it's a better option. So you can turn that on or off. But back on the accounting screen, you can find those. They're marked as finance charges is the way we kind of named them in the system, just so you can find them separate and apart from, say, invoices themselves. So if I were to back up here, I would be able to kind of find those in the system and see when they were last applied. This again is a test system, so it's only been run sporadically. I don't leave it on all the time. So again, just a search screen there, but you can reverse those or adjust those off if you need to, or you can manually apply different fees as well. And then there's the statement. So the statement is for us, the statement is what you communicate to the client. It's like your credit card statement, right? So you may get charges throughout the month, you may apply some payments, you may have had some credits back, but the statement is what you're going to send the client potentially once a month that says, where do you stand, right? So same thing, just like the invoice or current charge tab, you can come in here and search and say, okay, I want to find everything as of, again, it has a statement date concept. So if you run statements at the beginning of the month, again, you don't have to be there day one to race to press the button. You can just have it set up and say, okay, I'm coming here. I'm gonna create my statements in the system. And again, this is a way to preview those. You can come in and see every client. Now, what qualifies you or what makes you show up in this list is one of two things. Either you have new work for the month, or from since the last, I should say, last transaction, the last transaction they made, and the last statement. So if the last statement was sent in February, if there's been any activity in that month, it would show up in here, and you could see the activity. But you also may be on the list because you have a balance that you've never paid off. And so there's two ways. Again, you either activity for the time period or the billing period, or you have a running balance for the time for that in that statement cycle. Any of those two reasons, and that's one reason why we separated invoices from statements. Because let's say you have a client came in 2 months ago, had some work done, you sent them in, they had an invoice, you sent them a statement, at the end of that month, they didn't pay their bill, they didn't pay their bill, they didn't pay their bill. So we're 3 months later, I still want to send them a statement. They still owe me money, even though there's no new work in the system. I'm not generating a blank invoice. I'm just sending them another statement that refers to that information from, say, 3 months ago. And so either of those two reasons, they show up here at the statement level. And then there's a button for creating statements, just like creating invoices. If you have the job doing it, it's basically just pressing the button for you. And when you generate statements, just like invoices, you say as of a certain date. So again, anything new that happens after that would not be included on that statement in case you're having to run it for the end of the month, but it's say 3 or 4 days later. You don't, again, it's there for you. Now, creating a statement is just building the data in the database. It's linking in all the invoices to the statement. It's creating a statement number in there. I'm just going to go ahead and run these. It's already good. So we don't do past due. So when you are, so let me show this real quick. Um, so when you go to send the statement to the client, you can tell it to include the invoices, but it's only going to include the invoices for the current billing cycle. So if the invoice that caused the balance was 3 months ago, it would not include that invoice from 3 months ago. Because they got it 3 months ago, we're just sending them a statement saying you still owe us money. Now it will reference that statement or that invoice in the statement, but it does not send them the details to them. Now you can send it through the client screen if you want to send them an update like a report. I'll show that in a second. You can include it in that process, or if they have the portal, they can always pull old invoices from the portal. But back on the statements, so the first tab just generates the statements. It didn't send them yet. It didn't do anything with it. It just created the statement, linked everything up. It's now locked in the vet view as the statement date, the items on the statement. The next tab over is for sending the statements out to the clients. You can also preview then all the statements you just made. I need to back my thing up here. Um, so you can see all the statements that I just generated, 600 something of them it generated. Come on. It's also what it's doing here is not only finding all the statements, it's also cross-referencing the client and figuring out how that client wants to receive their statement. So you'll see here it has the statement number. So it gives you a statement number, date, the client, and then, just the billing type so you can see that. And then which way are they getting their statement? Dash means we don't have a way, email, snail mail, F or fax, there's there. You can also, the reason why we did it separately is that you can, if you want to just get all your mail ones so that you can print them, you can search for those and isolate them out and then go ahead and process those separately. Or you can find them all, send them out. You can also find a single client if you just want to look at their statement. Because this screen also, and since the search comes back here, um, come on, it's running a little slow right now. Come on. Probably a little slower too because it hadn't run the statements for several months. So there's a little extra there. Yeah. All right. Um, so again, I just said all the ones that said mail. Uh, or like I said, you can preview these. So if you want to preview them, you can click on it and view the statement. And so this is what I was talking about before. This is the statement page itself. It's just an outline of it, or just a summary. It shows them previous balance, current balance, everything that's in the billing cycle. If there's something historical, it would show up above it. So it kind of breaks out current versus those. When you send them, you have the way to say, I want to include those invoices or just send the summary report, depending on what you want to send the client out there. Now, there is a difference between previewing it and processing it. And the reason for that is some schools want to just look at it and kind of spot check it or check a few things. That's what this is allowing you to do. That does not log it against the client yet. Processing it is actually now I'm going to send them the faxes, send them the emails, send it to the printer for me to print them out and stuff them in an envelope. There's a way to find everybody that has no routes so I can clean them up. So if I have a client who's supposed to get a statement, but for some reason we don't have a fax or email address or a mailing address, or indicated at least, and that's also indicated to get accounting information. You can find those clients and go resolve that before you do anything. And then when you process it, that's the mechanism actually telling VetView to send it out, to do it. And what it's going to do at that point is it's going to create the PDF file of the statement and invoices, send them the email, but then it also is logging that in the system. And so you can come in here and see the send log, and I can actually let me see how far back this I need to go. Yeah, I have to go back a little further. Let's go back for. I haven't seen this is our test system. I haven't been used in a while. There you go. So in the send log, and you would see this if, as soon as you hit the process button and that's completed, you would see the immediate month that you just clicked on there available here for you to view. But this actually then shows you the client. It has a link to the actual PDF file that you sent them, and the message gets logged. This is the same information that you would find on the client screen itself. So going back to our companion animal hospital, if I go back to the client and alert section, you'll see that here, all the statements that were sent, a link to the actual PDF file, in addition to everything else. So again, as I mentioned before, everything that leaves VetView is logged, where it went, who pressed the button, when they pressed the button, and a link to the actual file that you can look at. So if there's questions, you can see exactly what you tried to send the client, even if they say they didn't get it potentially. Um, Again, that can be automated, or you can do it kind of through this kind of workflow process here. Um, for snail mail and no route, there's an option for it to print and directly to the printer, and it'll kind of work through a queue and go to the printer. If it's an accession report and it goes by snail mail, there's an email address that it emails and says, "Hey, this client needs this report." But for statements, it's right here. We give you kind of a mass print option where you can send them directly to the printer, but it will still log it against the client's log that you are mailing them, and it'll actually show the address of that is indicated where we're mailing that to. So even if it is going by mail, we record that in the log. So again, if there's questions, you can say, well, we sent it to this address, and they can say, well, that's the wrong or whatever maybe we need to do to kind of resolve why they're not getting their invoices or statements, I should say, statements for whatever reason. So um, so to go back to the question about can you send previous invoices to them? So if you wanted to, again, this process is going to send you the current statement cycle. So if I'm doing, say, April's billing cycle right now, it's only going to include invoices that were associated to this past month. It's not going to go backwards and find January or February. Even if they haven't paid for those, it's not going to show the invoice again. It'll show the in the summary, it'll show that they still haven't paid those in the system, but it does not reprint the invoices and send it to them. Now on the client screen in the AR tab, so going back here, there is a way to print the history, and you can pick whatever date range you want. So if you want to go back and say I want to get everything from the beginning of the year in my little report here, and then here you can say okay, include all the invoices in that period and or even show them current and pending charges. If you want to, if a client kind of asks you for a status of their account right now, you can use this report to show them all the invoices in a given period, all this, it's basically this history here that you see on the screen, and also anything that's in the current charges tab. You can print that out, and then that can be, printed and handed to them. And again, it has the statement is the first one, or the history is the first page, and then every page after that is the different invoices that were sent out or associated in that period of time. And so that can be, printed and handed them, sent to email. You save it as a PDF, send it to them as email if you wanted to. So there is a way that you can give a client history. Now, this same information is visible on the portal. If they do have a portal account, they can actually do self-serve. They can come in here and say, I want to look at this invoice, click on it, preview that invoice and see what it was, or maybe I want to see this statement. They can do all this from the portal if you give them access to their accounting history with their web portal account as well. So now with payments, one thing, so in VetView and the current version you're in, we do not associate payments directly to an invoice. It is more the modeling, the accounting style we're modeling is like a credit card. It's a payment on account system. So invoices go into their running total. So going back to the client, so all new invoices adjustments just affect their running total. When you apply a new payment, it's just affecting their total, right? Just kind of paying your credit card. You're not going to Visa and saying, well, I want to pay for the haircut, but I don't want to pay for my Sam's bill. Like that's not a thing. You just pay against your credit card. That's the way VetView is modeled right now, is that you are just paying against their accounts, or you're adjusting their account, or you have new invoices or new charges. It's everything, new invoices or finance charges going against your account. You're not actually saying I'm paying for a given item in the system. You can make comments and notes to kind of link them together, but there is nothing that's directly relating a payment to an invoice. So on that point, there's two ways that you can collect payments. We've given you a payment form on the client screen to make it convenient. Or if you want to give, say, a session receiving, if they need to be able to take deposits, but they don't need to do anything else, they just need to be able to collect a payment there. They can come in and say, well, the client gave me a check, put in some information here. If you have a third-party payment system that lets you use kind of like a point of care or a point of sale machine, we can have a button to link off to that. I think we're in conversation with that with Tyler to do that. But this is the little payment form that's on the client screen, giving, again, either if you're on the phone or you want to do it this way, anybody can kind of, well, it's privilege based, so you can turn it on or off. But if you have privileges, you can then collect a payment directly from this screen here. Just like you can add charges, you can also take that payment here. Now from the accounting screen, we also have a whole payments tab, which lets you kind of do different ways of doing it. So here, you want to post a payment, you come in, select the client, put in the tender, how much it is. You'll see the balance changes here. Post that into the system. So just do another $10. It shows up in the system. Now, posting deposit is not a client deposit. It's not the client is giving you a deposit for services in the system. This is representing more of the workflow of posting a deposit to the bank, right? So I can come in here, put in a bunch of checks per se, and then um, someone scribbled on my screen. Um, Interesting. But then also, I don't know how to clear that. Uh, uh, yeah, I don't know how to close that out. Um, Anyways, whoever added them, if you can find a way to take those off, that would be great. But so again, the posting deposit is designed more for the model, the posting it to the bank. So you put a bunch of checks in there and you want to post it to your account, or maybe you're taking it down to your business office, representing that you are posting these into your internal account. You could do that. When you post your deposits, you can also select an account number that you want to associate to that those deposits going into, say, your internal university accounts there as well. Uh, so, and then there is a flag you can set in the system called credit card on file. Again, VetView is not a credit card processor. We cannot actually process credit cards for you. We don't even recommend that you store credit cards in VetView because then you start opening up the door for other um, security restrictions that you need to apply to or comply with. So we did give you a way to flag at least on your on the client's account that you have a credit card, say, on file in a safe, things like that. And that way, if you have those here, you can find them quickly and post the credit card payments for them. If they've kind of approved you to auto pay there, you can do that. The next step over is direct charges. We do support also internal, because a lot of us are universities. If you have internal university accounts that you'll let them, get services and you're just going to transfer money from their account to your account for services, i.e. the word direct charge, you're just going to charge their account directly. We can recognize that is all set up at the client level. So when you're on the client screen, back again under the billing tab, that is this option down here at the bottom. Either you can flag them as just a normal billing, you're going to send them a statement, expect payment, or you can say, I've got a credit card on file, or you can say their direct charge, where it's going to ask you for, say, their internal account numbers that you can do. Um, there is a ticket already to turn that off, and so we're already looking at doing that. Currently in this version, no, you can't turn that tab off. It doesn't do anything as for you. It doesn't auto bill anything. It doesn't automatically post payments. It's just a way to find those clients. But we are looking at a way to turn that off. I think we already have a ticket from y'all to do that as well. All right. And then the last page is just a batch payment method. It's just a simpler form that allows you to select the client here, put in a payment type, and just kind of enter in a bunch of information, say quickly, you can, and then just, uh, and then you keep going and making more and more of these in the system automatically and then saving them. Or you can also upload it from a text file. So this was added, one of our clients asked for this, where they get a notice, they get a list of payments from their business office that were sent in directly to their business office, but they needed to recognize them in VetView. And they got a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet of the clients and payment amounts. And so there's an upload batch file that you can say what kind of payment account it was, maybe it was checks, uploading, and it's going to ask you for a CSV file that you can then easily go through and just create that list and then post them in VetView. It doesn't automatically post, it just brings them in so you can kind of review them and then you can post them at the end when you're done there as well. It also lets you stage it up. You can save your work, come back, and then post when you're done. So it's just another mechanism for posting payments in the system. If you are using the deposits, that's just a screen where you can find previous deposits. And then the last one I want to talk about is on accounts receivable. There's gotta be a way to get rid of these markups. Um,
The host has the option to clear all drawings, but individuals do not.
It
okay.
should be under annotate. I'm not sure if you see that, Jeff, but an annotate option and then clear all.
Uh,
I believe sometimes it's a floating bar.
it is. I'm just trying to figure out which one is the clear all button. Clear. Cleared all. There we go. Thank you. Um, all right. So then the accounts receivable. So we do support, accounts receivable in the sense that you can come in here, search for all clients who owe you money, um, a penny on up. But then you can use it as a search screen if you want to say, I want to find everybody who has a minimum balance, and or maybe you want to find everybody that's, say, 60 to 90 days over. You can do that. Now, this being a test system, everybody is old in my test system pretty much. But so you can categorize out, and not only can you use this as a way to find them, click on them, go over, look at their accounts, But you can also send collection letters right out of VetView. There's a part of the process, we kind of give you a dummy letter, but you can then create your own letters and you can have multiple different letters in the system. Your warning letter, your denial service letter, those kind of things in there. And then from there, you can, by selecting them either as a whole, that's what the search filters are good for. You can find everybody who's, say, over 90 days or not. And then you can hit process collection letters and it will actually email those out, fax, snail mail, or the same concept. The same way you got your statement, this would send them a collection letter. The other thing it does, though, is it documents it on their client account that you sent them a collection letter exactly when you sent it, what was it, the verbiage in the again, there's a link to the PDF so you can see what was sent, where it was sent to, by who, on what day, in the system as well. So you can kind of manage that list from there. And you can also use it as a jump off list if you see somebody that's over 120 days old or some amount that's flagging you. Because again, that's the thing you can do here, say find everybody that say it's over, say, $10,000. You can find those people and then decide, okay, that's too much. I'm going to then click on that, go to that client's record, make notes or lock them out. That's where the credit status comes in again. You can put them on hold, which means, again, they don't get the reports, kind of a leverage against them. Or you can say they're in bad status, which means that no new work will be allowed on that account in the system too. So that gives you a way to kind of manage those, see those, jump off to them, do those things as well, using the different search screens here and to manage when you send out letters and how much they've got indebted to you. And then the last tab, the last topic here is reports. And I'll be honest, we don't have a whole lot of reports in VetView. One of the things over the years we've noticed is a lot of labs have different ways that they want to slice and dice the numbers. And so nobody can really agree on a good set of financial reports. So we've got just the basics. The three columns here are really the same reports, but based on date. That's the other thing that comes into is people want to look at dates and have different analysis, right? So the day something finalized, well, the finalized date moves potentially, right? If I unfinalize something and refinalize it, that date changes potentially. But there are times when people want to see income by finalized date for whatever reason. Some people may want to see it by the invoice date. When was the invoice actually created? And so then I want to see the income based on the invoice date. Because again, if you're invoicing by a session, that number can float again, or not the number, but you may see, ups and downs throughout the month. Versus if you only invoice once a month, and that the invoice date and the statement date are pretty much the same thing because you're invoicing and statementing at the same time. So again, it's when was the invoice made potentially or payment. So this one also includes adjustments and payments because now we're talking about an invoice date. Payments and adjustments have a date that they were applied. Um, Payments and adjustments don't tie to a session specifically, so there's no reports over there. And then, of course, statements, we have those as well, where you can see the same way. That's when you let the client know about it. So really, the invoice date to me is the best one of these because that gives you a clear picture. It's based on revenue numbers. That's not going to change in the system. And that's also what the aging is based on, is the invoice date. So to me, that's the best set of reports there. And you have breakdowns for seeing all the payment details or summaries. And that's as simple as just if I say, give me all the payment details. I and again, this is a test system, so we only have one check here, and you can see the days, the checks that were done, or cash. Group it by that. A summary would just be that. It would just be a lump sum number. You got a table there, but then you can break your income down the same way. You can do just income being test income, miscellaneous income, but you can also break it down to section level, workstations, catalog, or by species. So some basic reports there showing you test counts, accession counts, income numbers around tests. But the other thing that the strength of VetView is that you can make as many reports as you want and add them to VetView. So if you want, pulling out certain test codes, or if you want to look at certain analytics of types of tests, species, programs, anything like that, you can build as many reports as you want, hang them in VetView here. It'll use different dates and stuff, filters that you add to the reports. There's also, on that note, there is a local reports screen where you can hang all kinds of local reports, not just financial ones. You can put any kind of report in the system you want to make available to all your users. When you're building reports, though, you can associate a privilege to it. So when I'm setting up a report, local or override, whichever kind of report it is, I can come in and find my local reports here, and I can say, well, maybe I've got a certain financial report or forecasting report or whatever it is you want to call it, but I can associate a security role to it, and then the user has to have that role to see that report, to be able to run the report, see it in their list of options as far as reports go. Because again, if they don't have the privilege to it, we don't even show them the name. Because again, we don't want to show them things they can't do, reports or screens. But you can associate security privileges to reports as well when you build those and hang them in the system, either on the local report screen or on the accounting screen again. And when you're setting up these reports, you can associate reports to almost every screen in the system. There's a way to associate reports to it. So maybe it's a client-based report for, again, another type of letter or something that you want the clients might ask for. You can actually make your own custom reports associated to the client screen, making it easy to then just go to the client, press the report button. So again, there's different places in the system where we could show you any of those custom reports you have as well. So again, that's part of the strength there of that in the system. So, but that's the end of today's session. Is there any questions I can answer around accounting? All right. Again, we have recorded this, and so we will be sending this out to everybody. It'll also be posted on our wiki. So if there's any questions there, uh, again, let us know. And we will be scheduling again lab-specific training as we get closer to your go live dates. We want to give you these as a good primer there that you can watch. Let other people who were not able to make the meeting be able to watch these as well. So, again, thank you for your time.